Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer briefing brought to you by S1 Jobs. And it's time to hand in your transfer request, then head over to s1jobs.com and upload your CV today with thousands of jobs across Edinburgh and the surrounding area. You'll find the one at S1 Jobs, so start your search today. I'm Patrick McPartlin, and today I am joined by a very special guest, Dominic Shaw, football writer with the Northern Echo, to tell us a little bit about new Hibs signing Dan Barlaser. Dominic, thank you for coming on the show. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks for having me. Much appreciated.
Good to get you. Good to get you on just to tell us a little bit more about Hibs' new midfield signing. So I think it was a move that sort of came out of the blue for a lot of Hibs fans. We knew that the head coach at Hibs was keen to sign midfielder. We knew it was a kind of defensive-minded midfielder, and then very late on transfer deadline day on Monday, it was emerged that Dan Barlaser had signed a season-long loan from Middlesbrough. So I suppose just to kind of kick this off, what's the situation been at Middlesbrough? Because I know there's been sort of a few central midfielders have been signed this summer. So is it a case of him kind of falling down the pecking order a little bit, or not really fitting in with what the current manager's his style of play?
Yeah, more the former. Barlaser, obviously, as you'll know, had moved in the last year of his contract at Middlesbrough, and Borough are well stocked in midfield. So first of all, they've managed to keep hold of Hayden Hackney, who's obviously star asset. Several Premier League clubs were linked. You were looking at like way upwards of £20 million because Ipswich had a £20 million bid accepted earlier in the summer, but Borough, as it got later in the window, obviously stood pretty firm and didn't want to lose him when they couldn't replace. So you had Hayden Hackney there, Aidan Morris, the central midfielder, the American who signed last summer, had a really, really good year, established himself really as the first choice alongside Hackney. Borough have signed a young midfielder called Abdullah Kante, who has had a bright start. And then they also brought in Sverre Nipan on loan from Manchester City, who can play as a number 10 or as a number 8. Game time was going to be extremely hard to come by for Barlaser. He was an unused substitute in the first 5 games of the season. And it just felt like, given that he was on the fringes, given he was in the last year of his contract, a move this summer really felt best for all parties, I think.
Yeah, I noticed he did seem to be linked with moves sort of last year. And I imagine that was maybe more off the back of his kind of first season at Borough, where he seemed to be a lot more kind of influential in that midfield. So is he someone who's kind of attracted attention previously for the way he's played for Middlesbrough?
He's always been unlucky at Borough, really. He signed in the January of 23. Am I getting my years mixed up there? Was it 22?
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah, and that was at a time when Michael Carrick had come in as head coach and transformed Borough immediately. Borough should have gone up that year. They made a mess of things, really, at the end of the year when they just missed out on automatic promotion. Carrick tinkered a little bit in the final weeks of the season. They lost the momentum, then lost in the playoffs. But in that first half of season, Barlaser, I think, made 3 or 4 starts through absolutely no fault of his own. Borough were a flying machine. For a chunk in that second half of the season, they were the best team in the Championship. They had Cameron Archer flying. Chuba Akpom looked like a world beater and got a £12 million move to Ajax. Ryan Giles, Aaron Ramsey, I could go on. And Johnny Howson was playing alongside Hayden Hackney at that point. Carrick pushed for the signing of Barlaser. Barlaser really was very much Carrick's man. Carrick obviously came up through the ranks on Tyneside, as Barlaser did, had been aware of him, obviously having come through at Newcastle, watched him closely at Rotherham, where Barlaser was very much the main man for Rotherham. And when he came into Borough, I haven't got the stats to hand. Sorry, I should have done. But I think he had the highest assist in the Championship that season when he came into Borough. Set piece delivery was excellent. But he was unfortunate. He was desperately unfortunate because the team was doing well. And then Johnny Howson signed a new contract and stayed and kind of continued to defy the years, really, and play like a 26-year-old instead of a 36-year-old. Then Aidan Morris signed, and there was an expectation that Morris would need patience and time, but he didn't. He hit the ground running. So Barlaser's always been unlucky. So I think the transfer interest in the past was more an acknowledgement, really, of he is a player who featured prominently for Borough last season, who were in the mix for promotion, was signed in the previous January by one of the best teams in the division. yet is maybe slightly on the fringes. Maybe we have an opportunity there. So it was no real surprise that the likes of Derby were linked in the past. But for whatever reason, a deal didn't get done. The expectation this summer, I think, was always that a move was going to be the best course of action.
Oh, so it sounds very much like he's been a victim of circumstance more than anything else.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Howson and then Morris, and then you would maybe have expected Hackney to move on, given he's an England under 21 international. Various Premier League clubs have been linked with Hackney and not just linked, have been interested. There has been firm interest there. But Hackney stayed, Morris has come in. Then this summer it felt like there was a need to freshen things up. Borough underwhelmed and disappointed last season in finishing 10th. Rob Edwards has come in. There has been an overhaul because 11 signings have come in. But Edwards didn't come in and say, right, we need to be out with the old and in with the new. It absolutely wasn't like that. But certain areas have been strengthened. And again, unfortunately for Barlaser, really, given the stage he's at now with his contract as well, central midfield is probably the area where Borough look more strongest.
And just sort of looking at his career in the past, I know he's obviously played a lot of positions in midfield. Seemed to play more as a kind of number 10 during his younger years at Newcastle. So, I mean, as you said, he does get a lot of assists. He sort of is on set pieces. Where has he sort of mostly been played by Middlesbrough when he's been there? Like where has been his sort of main position in the starting 11?
Carrick was wedded to a 4-2-3-1. And didn't budge from that. It was one of his downfalls in the end, really, Carrick, that he was a little bit too stubborn and didn't want to. I mean, we see it. God knows how many managers these days, don't we? If he'd have looked at his former club, Man United, and what was going on there, he'd have perhaps realised that you do need to be a bit more flexible. But Barlaser always played as one of the two. I can't remember him playing as a 10 for Borough. If Carrick tinkered in game, Hackney was the one who moved further forward to play as the kind of more advanced 10. But Barlaser always played, I guess you'd call it more of an 8. It's interesting because, and I'm sure we'll get onto it, but when he moved on Monday night, confirmed on Tuesday morning, and I'd seen a lot of the talk about kind of Hibs having prioritised a deep lie in number 6. I was kind of well aware of like the Hibs transfer scenario because we cover Sunderland as well. So obviously I was aware of the Nectar Triantis situation from earlier in the summer, who obviously you'll know better than me, has transformed himself really into a 6 rather than a central defender. But Barlaser's a different type of player. There maybe isn't the steeliness there of someone like Triandis, but what he's good at is always buying himself a yard, finding himself a yard, really. He's really comfortable in possession. He looks forward when he's on the ball. And I think especially, this might come across as a criticism. It is mainly, especially when you're winning and it's comfortable. Barlaser can look like an absolute world beater. There's been games where you've come away from a comfortable win thinking, oh man, if Barlaser played like that every week, then he would be in front of Hackney or Morris, or not Hackney, Howson or Morris or whoever else in the pecking order. I think he's probably more of an 8, but he's definitely more 6 than 10.
Okay, so it sounds...
Makes sense. Probably gone around the house a little bit there.
No, I mean, that does make sense because the Hibs head coach, David Gray, he likes his players to be flexible. He likes talking about dual position players. I mean, again, doesn't really deviate too much from sort of his sort of favourite kind of 3-5-2, but like, you know, within that he will change. He'll go for different partnerships in midfield. He'll change things up sort of like 60 to 70 minutes. So it's just interesting to kind of hear that he's not coming in as a sort of, very much a defensive minded, a destroyer or something that is just going to sit in front of the back four.
No, because Howson, I mean, it'd be a disservice to Howson to say Howson was that, because like, my God, the engine on him, hellfire. But his game in the early years was more of a protector, I guess. He was the deepest lying midfielder. He let Hackney go and do his thing. And the feeling at Borough, maybe more in the fan base than in the coaching team, because Carrick clearly disagreed, was Borough didn't have, this was before Morris came in, Borough didn't have a natural replacement, a natural cover for Howson, because Barlaser was seen as more of a Hackney. And then the question was, when Howson was missing, could Hackney and Barlaser really play together? Because they were both similar players. They both wanted to get forward. They both liked to travel with the ball. Their immediate, I guess, their instinctive reaction when they got the ball was to look forward, was to move it forward. Now, that's not to say that Barlaser, shirked a tackle or was anything like that. He absolutely didn't. He does the dirty work that midfielders have to do. But no, he's not a destroyer.
Yeah, I was going to ask about his defensive qualities, you like, because I did see sort of some suggestions from Middlesbrough fans on Monday night that, because as you mentioned there was this sort of big focus on him signing a defensive midfielder, and the sort of general consensus seemed to be that defensively he wasn't great. It was more about his kind of like forward thinking and his sort of ability on the ball, his vision to pick a pass, that sort of thing. But you sort of seem to be there suggesting that he can do the defensive side, he can do the dirty work.
Yeah, that's not the side of the game that comes natural to him. What I would say, I think it's hard to judge because Carrick, Borough's weakness. Borough were too soft. Borough were too soft last season. That's I was going to kind of go around the houses and try and get to it, but try and be a bit more polite about it. But Borough were too soft last season, and they had a soft underbelly and they had a soft centre, and that cost them in so many games. And when you look at the type of players Borough's brought in this summer, it's clear that there's been a drive to add a bit more steel to the side, I think. And while Barlaser was part of that team, so were players like Johnny Howson and Aidan Morris and Dale Fry, who are anything but soft players. They're all about steel. So that tells me that maybe the way the side was set up to play was more the issue rather than the individual players. So I feel like I can't really give a true fair reflection of what Barlaser's like as a deep lying, destroying midfielder, because we've never really seen him in that role, even when he's played in the midfield role when Howson hasn't been there. As I've said, or Morris hasn't been there. As I've said, it's to go. His instinct is to go forward. His instinct has not been to sit there, win a tackle, win possession, protect the defence, and then give it off and let someone else do the work going forward. He'd want to be one of those players who wants to be getting involved with the attack, setting the wingers or the attacking players away. So this isn't a cop-out, having watched him for 2.5 years, but I think probably there'd be an intrigue from a Borough perspective as to how Barlaser got on in that sort of role, if that's how he's used.
Mm-hmm. And you talk about his set pieces. I mean, this is or it certainly was last season, the real strength for Hibs was their kind of threat from set pieces. So is that, is it free kicks? Is it corners? Is it a little bit of everything? And is that kind of where he gets most of his assists, or is it very much a kind of balance between set pieces and just open play?
Yeah, again, I'm not doing Borough I'm not speaking particularly highly of Borough from the last couple of years. Set pieces were a problem for Borough last season. They didn't score enough goals from them, and the new coaching team identified that as an immediate area of improvement. But that's not to say anything against Barlaser's delivery. Barlaser came in. One of the key traits that I think appealed to Borough was his assist numbers. Clearly, I'm sure he was joint with only Ryan Giles, who was at Borough at the time and was enjoying a remarkable season when he came in. And a lot of those came from set pieces, came from corners, free kicks. I wouldn't say, if you're winning a free kick 20 yards out, 25 yards out and going for goal, we never saw Barlaser as a free kick taker in that area. Mm-hmm. But if you're winning a free kick midway inside the opposition team half and you can get your centre backs trotting forward and getting into the box, then that is where Barlaser had stepped forward. And I know the other thing, he wasn't so well thought of at Rotherham, and I think he still is. I'd seen a guy called Paul Davis who covers Rotherham for, I think it's the Rotherham Advertiser down here, had just put out a post on X this week when Barlaser had gone, and a lot of the response was there no way we could have got him back? Why couldn't we have had a go at getting him back? Barlaser, is he 28? He's not 33 or 34. this is a big season for Barlaser. He's playing for his future. He's in his last year of his contract. He's not going to have gone to Hibs thinking, if I can get one more 2-year contract to see me through the end of his career. Really, he should be looking at it and thinking, I've still got. I mean, he's played with Johnny House, and if he's taking inspiration from Johnny House, he could be thinking, I've got a decade left to play. But he's definitely got 6 or 7 years left in him. So, having not played an awful lot of football last year, I think he made 24 starts the season before. Having not played an awful lot of football last year, it feels like a really big move for Barlaser.
I was going to ask about that because he is in the last year of his contract, and I think you sometimes see players who go on loan for a season, and it's almost like a kind of, what do you call it? It's like they do a season on loan and then they sign a sort of permanent deal later on. But is there a bit of a feeling that Barlaser might feel he's got a bit more to prove down south? Whether it's trying to convince Borrell to give him another chance, whether it's trying to get another club down there, or is it kind of about trying something new at this stage in his career, do you think?
I think he won't get a new contract at Borough just because he's going to be 28, 29 by the end of his contract. He doesn't feature in Rob Edwards' plans now. As I was saying there, Borough are well stocked. They've also brought in Alan Brown on loan from Sunderland for the season. So Borough are very well stocked there. He's got a young family, Barlaser, and I remember he's a really good talker. If you speak to him, if you get a chance to speak to him after a game, really good talker, really good bloke. And I remember speaking to Michael Carrick a few times last season about Barlaser when he wasn't playing, and Carrick could not have stressed enough just how important he was behind the scenes. And Carrick wasn't a good talker. Carrick was hard work. Not nothing against him, but he was hard work. Like Man United upbringing, didn't really want to give much away. But when he got the chance to talk about Barlaser's importance in the dressing room, he absolutely would. I remember talking to Barlaser, I think it was Oxford last year. Borough had won well. I think they scored 6 that day. And Barlaser had played, and Borough's fans had been singing his name, and he was talking about how much that meant. And he also talked about how, I don't know how old his little one is, but I'm sure he's just got one young'un, and he was saying then about how becoming a dad has changed his mindset. And yeah, he wants to be playing football every week. But he's also realised that as long as he goes into training and gives his all every day and go home and look himself in the mirror, kind of realised there's more to life than just being in the starting 11 on a Saturday. So for all he clearly still has loads to offer, I don't know what his family circumstances are like and whether his family have moved up there. But if his family settle, if he's playing football and enjoying it and he's happy off the pitch there, then I think that'll be as important to Barlaser as what is happening on the pitch. I think, if his family settle there, but then he gets the chance to move to Portsmouth on a 3-year contract, I don't necessarily think he's going to think, well, that's a chance to play championship football again. So I don't know what his circumstances are, but yeah, he's that will be, I would imagine, as much in his thinking as what's happening on the pitch.
You preempted my next question there quite nicely, because I was going to ask about his character, because that's something that Hibs have put such a lot of focus on. Really, sort of, I suppose, in the last sort of 12 to 18 months. When they talk about signings, they talk about signing players who obviously have the quality to be better than what was there previously, but they have to have the right character. So I think you just look at some of the players they've signed recently. They've signed the likes of Dwight Gale. They've signed Grant Hanley this summer. Players who just have the kind of right mentality, the right character, who can be a leader in the dressing room, and just sort of be a really good addition to the group. So is Barlaser is he a bit of a leader? Is he just a kind of good guy to have around? Is he a bit of everything?
He was absolutely all of the above at Borough. He was the boss on the pool table in the dressing room. By all accounts, he was pretty much unbeatable on the pool table. And any new signings who came in, kind of one of the early things he had to do at Borough really was see if they could beat Barlaser on the pool table. But yeah, he was very much kind of at the heart of the dressing room, and I wonder whether that maybe changed slightly this summer. In that, I think this summer it became pretty obvious that he wasn't going to feature, and that he was not part of the thinking. But he was still named among the substitutes for all 5 Borough games, and Borough's squad is pretty deep now. There were players who were missing from the squad on Saturday who who would regularly get into the squad. But yeah, previously Carrick is a joker. He's at the heart of kind of all the dressing room crack banter, whatever you want to call it. And Carrick put a lot of importance in that. Whenever Borough did their kind of behind the scenes training ground videos, like Barlaser was there kind of larking about and right at the heart of it. Yeah, I think absolutely he will see himself as a leader. He's experienced as well now as well. When he signed for Borough, that was probably his big move. On the back of playing for Rotherham, with respect, that was a big move for Borough. He was coming in to play for Michael Carrick, who I think it's fair to say will have been one of his idols, given where they both were brought up. But yeah, he established himself as a major kind of force in the dressing room at Borough, and I would think he will go and do exactly the same at Hibs.
And I suppose just the last question from me on Barlaser would be how do you sort of see him adapting to Scottish football? Because I know it's a cliche, but there is this kind of belief that Scottish football is different, and you get a lot of players coming up from particularly sort of the English sort of Championship, League One, League Two, who I think kind of expect Scottish football to be very easy to adapt to, and a lot of them get a bit of a shock when they do come up and they sort of get into the thick of it. But from what you said over the past sort of 20 minutes or so, Barlaser doesn't seem like someone who will have much trouble settling in and won't take it for granted. He won't sort of he will take it seriously. He'll know what's expected. Is that kind of fair comment?
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any arrogance there, and I think that is an arrogance if you go from League One or the Championship and suddenly expect to be to look like a world beater. I absolutely don't think there'll be any arrogance. I don't think the enormity. I mean, I'm sure I'd seen on social this week he talked about the kind of how delighted he was to join a club of that stature and size. I don't think the enormity of the move would be lost on Barlaser, and I wonder whether Derby were in for him and Millwall were in for him. And I mean, Derby's a huge club, isn't it? From what I gathered, I don't know whether bids came in there, but he could have gone down to League One. I'm almost certain of it. I don't know whether there was interest there from Rotherham, but that sort of move he could have made. I think that the chance to join Hibs, the chance to go into a new division, a top division, I think he'll see that as a new challenge that he'll relish, and a challenge rather than maybe a kind of like an easier way out. I absolutely don't think that'll be in his thinking.
Cool. And just to wrap this up, what can Hibs fans expect? Just sort of sum up just what we've been talking about, just what he's like as a player on the pitch, what he'll do, sort of on a week-to-week basis if he's getting a game, that kind of thing. Just what Hibs fans can expect, kind of in a nutshell.
Big character in the dressing room and on the pitch. Someone who wants the ball, wants to make things happen, wants to look forward, wants to create, and someone, I think, crucially, who wants to get rolling again with his career. He's played a bit part role really over the course of the last certainly year, 18 months, and I think now he'll be desperate to get playing again and to establish himself as a major player in the team.
Brilliant. Well, I will wrap things up there. Thank you for joining us, Dominic. Thank you for giving us that insight into Dan Barlaser. If you haven't subscribed to the Hibs Observer, you can still do so for £1 for 6 months. Thank you for watching this video, and we will see you again soon. Cheers.